Do you know the difference between being an overachiever and being a high achiever? Well, one difference is that overachieving is exhausting. High achieving is actually energizing. Coming up next on the Successful Women Think Differently podcast, I'm talking about the indicators of overachievement, how to avoid them, and if achievement is important to you, how to achieve at high levels while maintaining a healthy, happy life. My guess is, since you're listening to the Successful Women Think Differently podcast, that you enjoy success, you enjoy achievement, and you probably have already achieved a great deal in your life. Maybe people even are so overwhelmed by your achievements that they've called you an overachiever. Maybe you've jokingly called yourself an overachiever. I've certainly done that, and at times in my life taken on the label of overachiever, but it was actually deserved. I don't consider myself an overachiever anymore, and I'm really grateful for that, because overachievement doesn't come from a healthy place. Overachievement is exactly what it sounds like. It's too much. And it's not only too much, it's for the wrong reasons that can leave us not only feeling exhausted, but often feeling depleted, feeling like we're never enough, we're not going to get there. I'm going to dive into all of that in just a moment. But I want to also point out that achievement in itself can be a wonderful thing. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm paraphrasing it, it comes from Sir Richard Layard, a British economist who simply wrote a book called Happiness that I read years ago. But he said something along these lines. Basically, he says that, as human beings, we need a project, like we need things to be able to accomplish. And he said, just watch children. They want to see how high they can jump, how fast they can run. Prod any happy adult and you will find a project. In other words, we like to achieve. We, even in small ways, as human beings, we want to be productive. We want to feel like we are testing out what our potential is, and we're doing things, and hopefully we're doing things that are meaningful, that have impact, or that just leave us feeling satisfied because we were able to meet the challenge in front of us. Sometimes we can get this idea that somehow being focused on achievement is somehow a negative. I think particularly as women, we can have these types of messages that come at us. If you are a woman who has focused at all on your professional life, you may have had people say at times, oh, you must just be all about your career, right? I remember people saying that to me in my late 20s and feeling very frustrated by it. Oh, you don't want a family, you just want a career. Who told you that? I never said that, but I do enjoy what I do. I do enjoy making an impact on other people. This is one of those things that we just don't hear said as often to men, having to justify achievements and goals and going after big dreams. And so if that has ever been you, you could take on the idea that having a big dream and going after it, or achieving another accomplishment ends up getting dampened by guilt or shame, right? Guilt that maybe I should have been doing something else with my time, or shame, which is not so much about what you've done, but who you are. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm focused on the wrong things. And if that's been you, I just want to invite you to let it go. And we're all wired differently. And achievement means different things to different people. There are professional achievements, there are personal achievements, there are relationship achievements. There are health achievements, right? There are all different kinds of ways that achievement shows up. I was excited when I first heard Dr. Martin Seligman, who was one of my professors in positive psychology, talking about this back when I was in school there at Penn this was 07, 08. And he began really talking about this idea of achievement as one of the pillars of helping to create happiness for us, that there are certain people for whom that productivity creates this boost of positive emotion. It's not everybody, but as soon as I heard him say that, I was like, that's me. I often joke that sometimes I will add something to my to-do list at the end of the day if I didn't put it on at the beginning of the day, because I just get joy from checking things off of my list. That's like, I did that. I want credit. Yes. So, achievement just helps us feel productive, that we are, fruitful in our days and the things that we are doing. We're getting things done. The key is making sure we're getting the right things done, the meaningful things done. So sometimes that means adding things that you normally don't consider achievements onto your goal list, right? So, for example, something that Jeff and I recently made like a tangible goal was one-on-one time with Alex. And it doesn't have to be a ton of the one-on-one time, but we each try to be intentional about one-on-one time doing something he likes to do. Typically, that means kicking a soccer ball in the backyard or jumping on the trampoline while he gives me instructions about what I'm supposed to do that makes it a fun game for him. And so, these aren't things I would necessarily pick, but they're meaningful, right? These are parenting achievements, little ones, little daily ones, right? So even if it's just, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes on the trampoline, it's a point of connection and play. And play is a happiness trigger. And we know from the research that particularly men and boys bond through play. Women and girls more often bond through connection, face-to-face, conversation. And that's important too. So by making this a goal, a daily achievement, okay, that feeds into my values of what I'm wanting to do, right? So when I talk about achievement, I'm not just talking about, going back to school and getting that next degree or the promotion or how much money and revenue your business is generating this year. I'm talking about a full breadth of achievements that are meaningful for you, okay? No judgment on what those are. But let's talk about the difference between overachievement and high achievement. A lot of it has to do with how it ends up causing you to feel and the impact it's having on your life and your relationships. Overachievement is often connected with overcompensation. When you're an overachiever, the finish line always gets pushed out further. You can never do enough. There are never enough achievements. So you could do absolutely phenomenal things, and there is no contentment with that. There is no, I reached the goal, and now I feel satisfied. Now, I'm not saying that a high achiever may not set higher goals. What I am saying is that the overachiever, as they get to the finish line gets moved out. They never actually get to that place that is, I did it. There's a bit of perfectionism that comes in. And oftentimes with overcompensation, what we are doing is trying to make up for something, trying to prove something. It literally is compensating more than is necessary for something. So when I say I was an overachiever at one point in my life, yeah, I was. Um, One, I grew up always praised for being like really quick getting through things. I started school early, I finished early, and then I went through my first year of college and failed academically, failed pretty miserably that first year. And then I lost all this academic confidence. And as a result, when I continued in school, I felt like I had to prove something. I felt like I had to compensate for the first year on academic probation, but I would never be able to make up how badly that impacted my GPA. So I came up with a new measure, right? I pushed my finish line out. Well, if you finish school fast, right? You finish high school a year ahead, finish college a year ahead. But here's the thing, as I said, when you're overcompensating, you keep pushing out the finish line. So I did finish college in 3 years. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I went to 3 colleges in 3 states, Colorado, California, and Florida, and graduated in 3 years at 20. But when you're overcompensating, it's not enough. You've got to push the line out. You can never do enough. So I pushed it out, went straight into graduate school, and finished that. And then was suddenly realizing, what were you doing? what were you in a hurry for? Who are you proving this to, right? There ends up, when you're overachieving, there ends up being an emptiness to the achievement. There's not a satisfaction at the end. There is a, what did I do all of this for? What does this mean now? And so you are missing the journey oftentimes because it's not about the journey at all, which leads me to another indicator, which is that oftentimes when you're overachieving, you are operating in a fixed mindset. When you fail at something, when you don't do well, you see it as a condemnation on who you are. You're not smart. You're not talented. You're not hardworking enough. You're not, you fill in the blank, not good enough in some way. And so you are, let me explain what a fixed mindset is. A fixed mindset says what talent you have, the intelligence you have, it's fixed. There's a finite amount of it. And so if you bump up against a challenge that you are having trouble figuring out how to conquer, it's a threat, because even though you might consider yourself talented or smart, it feels like you have bumped up against your limitation, right? So those with a fixed mindset often will back away from challenges. They might not even put forth as much effort because they don't really think effort matters as much as how you were just naturally born, right? So if you fail at something, you don't do well at something, whether it's school or something in your career or in a relationship, when you have a fixed mindset, it feels like you're just doomed. It's just a condemnation on who you are. These are your limitations, right? And so you can find yourself trying to defend how smart you are, trying to prove how smart, how talented, how worthy, how deserving you are when you have a fixed mindset. Those who are high achievers tend to have a growth mindset. They don't feel like they need to prove something. They're not trying to defend their relative position on the ladder of intelligence or the ladder of talent. They actually believe that where they are today is a starting point for growth. And so they are asking the question, how does this goal grow me? What am I going to learn if I do this, right? An overachiever is often concerned, what is this goal going to prove about me if I'm not able to reach it? So that might mean you actually set the bar lower, or that you feel like you have to hide when you fail at something, or overcompensate to prove that you are worthy, smart, intelligent, etc. All right. Another indicator of overachievement is you're often more prone to upward social comparisons, where you're beating yourself up for not measuring up to those that you perceive as doing better than you are. And so you may actually find yourself feeling less valuable than those that you feel are higher achieving. And that is because of another indicator of overachievement. You actually equate achievements with personal value when you overachieve. So overachievers are looking at the achievement of something as giving them, as a human being, more value. The more achievements, the more deserving I am, the more valuable I am. There is an inherent insecurity that often drives overachievement. And so just noticing, like, what's my motivation here? Which leads me to the last indicator I want to share, which is your primary motivation extrinsic or intrinsic? Extrinsic or external factors that are motivating you, like a new title, money, possessions, whatever it is, that it's something tangible and it's something outside of you. And this isn't necessarily always a negative in terms of motivation, but if it's the primary motivator, this can create issues that, again, tie back to personal value. Intrinsic motivation is what leads us into high achievement. Intrinsic motivation is about you focusing on progress over perfection. So high achievers have a primary motivation that is intrinsic. It's not that there are no extrinsic motivations. Sure, more money that's going to lead to you being able to do some things that are meaningful to you. There's nothing wrong with that as a motivator, right? But what is your primary motivation? Even if money is a motivator, it often is a motivator because of something meaningful it's going to allow you to experience or to do, okay? So that intrinsic motivation, when it comes to goals, is about focusing on progress. It is about noticing how you're growing and what you're learning in the process. It's progress over perfection. Overachievement is a perfectionism that cannot be met. There's always something more to do. High achievement is, oh, look, I was here and now I've moved forward. I'm 2 steps further along and I learned something in that. And I'm feeling satisfied and gratified because I'm actually making progress. So personal growth is often a big part of the focus when you are a high achiever. How am I growing? Often when you're high achieving, you see your personal growth as a responsibility. You see it as a means to achieving your purpose, right? Your unique divine assignments. And so that personal growth is motivating for you, and that's an intrinsic motivator. You enjoy seeing your potential achieved. There is just a joy, a peace, a contentment that comes from that when you're a high achiever. Which leads me to this. And another indicator of high achievement is you do things for the pure joy of it. When you are, let's say you're pursuing a higher level of education or some sort of training, you're on cloud 9 when you're pursuing it, when you're studying, because you love the subject matter, you love the impact you're able to make through these skills that you're learning. You love the opportunity to serve better as a result of learning more and learning better ways of doing things. So you're doing it for the joy of it. You're doing it because it's something that you feel passionate about. You feel a sense of purpose around it. Another indicator of being a high achiever over an overachiever goes back to something I said around overachievement, which is, for a high achiever, failing is an event, not a condemnation. Failing is a part of the process. And for the high achiever, they expect some amount of failure along the way, and it doesn't mess them up. They might be disappointed. They might have hoped or thought things were going to go a certain way, but they're not shocked by it because they understand that failure is a part of the journey to success. Failure is a way to learn. Failure is often a message. There's often an opportunity for growth in it. So when it happens, they see it as as a coach, I see it as a coaching opportunity. What did I learn from this? What is this experience showing me that perhaps I wouldn't have seen without the failure? That's it. They think differently in the face of a failure. And it's an event, it's not a condemnation. It's something that happened. It doesn't define who they are. It's a big difference. I failed is not the same as I am a failure. Key distinction. And then lastly, when you're a high achiever, your approach is balanced. You're not wearing yourself out. You're not compelled to win at all costs. When the costs get too high, you're starting to notice that your relationships are suffering, or your health is suffering, or you don't have enough time, or you're stressed all the time, or you're feeling the high anxiety and there's absolutely too much pressure and it's not healthy. You don't keep going. You realize that's a message and you pay attention to it. You don't force the deadline. You realize, wait a minute, perhaps my optimism played a role here in this deadline. And if we're able to move it, if we're able to shift a couple of the expectations for it when I see that it's too much, then I do that. I put things into perspective when it's possible and when it's necessary. And I also notice the impact of the goal of the project on the people who are involved. Because sometimes, even if we're fine moving forward, the others involved in order to make it happen may not be. And so you're choosing relationships over results and deadlines. And you're saying, oh, we can get there, but maybe we'll do it in a little bit different way or a little bit different timing. And now we can all breathe and we can learn from this so that we plan better for next time. So there's a balanced approach. It's not achievement at all costs. It's not wearing myself out to the detriment of my health or relationships or other meaningful aspects of my life. I put achievement into perspective, and because I'm intrinsically motivated, because personal growth is such an important part of the process, because I'm choosing progress over perfection, I can be flexible, which means I can be resilient on the way to goal. So that's it. Difference between overachievers and high achievers. If you recognized yourself here, maybe you recognize some of the overachievement, it's an opportunity to reflect and to say, what might I be compensating for? And what could I do to make adjustments that make my goals more meaningful? And I can find that intrinsic motivation where I'm focusing on growth and progress more than I am on the extrinsic factors that often can end up leaving us feeling depleted, exhausted, and unsatisfied when we get to the finish line, if we even allow ourselves to get there, right? Do you remember when you're overachieving, you're often pushing it out. High achievement can be so gratifying, and honestly, it can be energizing. When you are realizing that you are growing, that you're learning, that you're farther ahead in terms of your growth this year than you were last year, that you're persevering even though something is hard. And you can get to your finish line and you can celebrate and rest and savor it. And then maybe there's some next level once you have been able to do all of that. And you say, oh yeah, I think I'm going to learn and grow in another way. But it's not a rush. It is something that happens authentically and organically. So this is a process we often are using and thinking about in the CAP Institutes for training our personal and executive coaches. And so you might find it helpful. If so, check out our upcoming coach training intensive. We do them once per quarter. You may find it super helpful. We've got one that's coming up December 2nd through 4th. So that's actually this week, but we've got another coming up in the first quarter. So go to capinstitute.com and check that out. If you're wanting to grow just in a very personal way, not so much coaching others to grow, but you really want to be on a good path with your own personal growth, check out the Successful Women's Academy, SWA. That is where I delve into your personal growth plan. I coach you through our personal growth lessons each month in our virtual coaching sessions. We actually meet live online with Zoom, and we have a fantastic community with hundreds of women, successful women just like you, who are focused on their personal growth. So I would love to serve you in that way. You can check that out at valerieburton.com/SWA. So remember, how far you go is largely determined by how much you are willing to grow. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of the Successful Women Think Differently podcast. I'll talk to you next time.